Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, no matter where you are in the world. We're so happy that you're joining us. My name is Meg. I am part of Power to Fly's virtual hosting team, and I am so excited to be joining you on this amazing Monday morning and introducing you to this great speaker that we have from Pluralsight. So as we get going, just want to go over a couple quick housekeeping items with y'all. If you've participated in another Power to Fly chat and learn before, this will be kind of old hat for you, but we'll try and get through it quickly. Today's event, like all of our virtual events, is all about you. We want our participants and our audience members, whoever took time out of their day to join us today, we want to make sure that you get the best experience possible. So if you would like to participate, like we strongly encourage, you are more than welcome to turn your cameras on if you'd like. Don't feel a pressure to be insta-perfect. I think I was 4 days full of dry shampoo before I finally showered this morning. So, bring your messy buns, bring your furry coworkers, your non-traditional workspaces, child supervisors, all that kind of stuff. Bring it. We want to meet you where you are and know that you can participate with us no matter where you are, what you look like, what situation you're coming from. Even if this is like the one thing you've been able to drag yourself out of bed or off the couch to do for yourself all day, awesome. Good for you. We're so happy to see you. So if you do want to participate, you can ask questions or add comments to what we're saying today. You can do that by coming off mute if you'd like, so we can hear you via audio. If you do come off mute at any point during today's session, just to warn you, you will show up on the live recording. So if you have any kind of privacy concerns or just really don't want to show up on the recording, that's totally fine. You can still participate by putting any questions or comments you have into the Zoom chat. And if you are super black ops, deep cover, don't want anyone to know you're here, that's okay too. You can still add questions and comments. You're just going to DM them to me instead of sending them to everyone in the whole group. So you'll just pick my name from the drop down menu there. It'll say Meg, she, her, Power to Fly. All right, so like I said, this session is being recorded. So don't worry about having to take notes, or if you miss what someone says, you can always go back and review the recording as often and as many times as you want. So if Amy says something today that's just mind-blowing and you cannot wait to share it. So the way you'll get the recording is in two different ways. So whether you are, everybody that registered for today's session, whether you show up, stay for 5 minutes, log on and off a couple times, stay for the full 60, doesn't matter. Everyone that registered will get a link in an email in about 1 to 2 business days to where they can view this recording on Power to Fly's website. Now, if Amy says something mind-blowing and you have to share it now, you can't wait the 1 to 2 days. Your friend, your coworker, your relative has to hear this. You can always go over to our YouTube channel. We are at Power to Fly. I'm actually going to grab the URL from our YouTube channel in just a minute here, and I'll feed it into you in case you want to see it there. The recording will be posted there usually within about 5 to 15 minutes of the end of today's session, because we're also live streaming to YouTube. So you can always check it out there. I also highly recommend that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's a great way to make sure that you stay up to date on awesome chats like this. Even if you may not have registered for them, you can always go in and watch. And as well as keeping up with us on our other social media channels. So we are at Power to Fly on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, in addition to YouTube. So as we get going into the session, I am going to call out a couple other basic rules or protocol for how we do this. But before we do that, I'm really excited to introduce you to Pluralsight. So Amy is here as part of the Pluralsight team today, and Pluralsight, like many of our amazing Power to Fly partners, is hiring. So I'm going to grab the link right now to where you can connect with the Pluralsight page. It'll look much like what you're seeing right here on your screen right now. It looks like currently we've got 157 roles open with them. So the Pluralsight page is a really great place to go to either get more information on Pluralsight. You do that under company info. You click on events, it's going to show you the past events that they have participated in with us, so recordings from those events, but it's also going to show you some of the upcoming stuff that Pluralsight might be involved in. So stuff like our virtual job fairs, or these chat and learn sessions, or our mini summits. The other thing you can do is check out their open roles. Obviously, if you click on that, it's going to take you down to the bottom of the page where you can search just those roles. But before you do, I just want to highlight something called the Follow Network. Now, when you look at this page in your browser, up around here somewhere in the upper right-hand corner is going to be a big pink follow button. If you click that button, it does a couple different things for you. But basically what it does is it's going to put you on Pluralsight's radar before you even fill out an application. And it's going to keep Pluralsight on your radar by letting you know when they post new jobs. So if you are interested in working with Pluralsight, especially if you're interested and maybe don't see a role right now that super fits what you're looking for, click that follow button. Make sure that you are up to date on what Pluralsight has going. Now with Power to Fly, you can follow and unfollow as many companies as you like. You can follow and unfollow at will. So I could change my mind 4 times in a week about Pluralsight. But I think once you you hear from Amy and you hear a little bit more about Pluralsight as a company, I'm pretty sure you'll want to follow them and stay following. It's also a really great thing to keep, to use if you are maybe not actively looking, but this is a company that you want to make sure, later on when you are kind of thinking or looking around to see what else might be out there, that way Pluralsight, you don't sleep on Pluralsight. So that's Pluralsight. And then obviously our amazing guest speaker who is about to join us is from Pluralsight. Amy Dredge grew from a new computer science graduate to Pluralsight's head of technology center of excellence. She did this over the course of 10 years. At the same time, she created her family, which includes 3 children, now ages 7 to 1. So clearly, Amy, you haven't been busy at all, lots of leisure time for you. Amy is passionate about software engineering, team collaboration, and sustainability practices. She loves to serve in her community, run, cook, and garden. So welcome, Amy, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Meg. I'm happy to be here. And actually, since we created this slide, there is some news to add, which is I'm expecting my 4th child. So in case that's relevant to anybody about working while pregnant, I'm also right in the midst of that. So that's first top of mind.
Congratulations, that's so exciting. Oh my gosh, and I'm sure there's plenty of people who maybe are not in the mommy club or in the working parents club quite yet, but I think this is a really great way for people to hopefully ask you some questions and get real world answers. So super awesome. Okay, so before we jump into our questions, the last slide I'm going to talk to y'all about is some of the principal themes for today's conversation. Now, what we did is we developed these themes in concert with Amy, both by talking to her before, before we went live with this session and opened it up and hoped that you all would register, as well as by looking at the questions that y'all submitted during the registration phase. So we tried to condense all those down, arrange them into a conversational format, and we're going to try and hit the high points that you see on your screen today. But something that's really important to remember, and along the lines of that participation stuff I mentioned earlier, is that if you took time out of your day to spend with Power to Fly, we want to make sure that that time you spend with us is well worth it. So if you are live with us today and you want to make sure that your question gets asked, make sure that you come off mute and ask it, or you can put your question into the Zoom chat. Please feel free to share comments, or if we go over one of your questions and you want to add some more context to it and add details, you're fine to do that as well. The one thing I do ask, if you are going to come off mute, which again, highly encouraged, just make sure that you're not interrupting Amy or one of our other attendees. Meanwhile, I get paid to fill the silence, so please feel free to interrupt me. That's totally fine. We just want to make sure that if you have a question and you want to get an answer to it, the best possible ways to do that are to come off mute and ask, or throw it in the Zoom chat. Either DMs or everyone, doesn't matter. I'll be keeping my eye on both. So what we're going to do today, we're going to talk to Amy about some of the time allocation strategies that you can use to help you focus on what is most important. And obviously, most important is a relative term. So what's most important to you in your life? We're going to talk about some mindset tools that you can also use so that you can be your biggest champion in a way that feels really awkward and can feel really unnatural for a lot of people, but it's definitely something that can be learned. And then we're also going to focus a little bit on some advice to help you advance your career, especially while you are a caregiver. Now, this doesn't have to be of children. I know that parents are the main focus here, but you can be a caregiver in all kinds of ways. So hopefully this is helpful not only to the parents in our group here, but to those who have, families and responsibilities and people that rely on them, which I think is pretty much most of us. All right, so to jump us into our first question today, I'm going to pull down my screen here so that way it's more about Amy and you, our participants. And I want to talk a little bit about this first question that came in, and this came out in a lot. So many people, especially working parents, know that time management is seriously key. So that was one of the first questions they wanted to know about what tips, Amy, you might have for them on time management, as well as kind of balancing your energy. There's a third part to this question, but we'll circle back to that in just a second.
Awesome. Yeah. So time management, you'll probably be disappointed to hear I don't have anything you probably haven't heard before, but something that really worked for me was taking a time log. So I actually stole this from a book that I listened to. There are two books by the same author, and I'll give those books in just a moment. But the author talks about, in a week you have 168 hours, and how do you choose to spend those? Nobody gets to choose how you use that time except yourself. And I think a lot of times we tell ourselves like this lie that somebody that we see that like it looks like they have it all figured out, like they've figured out this trick and they magically like have warped time and they have more time. They don't. They have the same time in a week that everybody else has, that you have. And a big eye opener for me was taking a time log. Now, I'm a pretty intentional person in my life, and taking a time log for me wasn't, it didn't open my eyes in terms of like, oh, I'm spending this time in this way I didn't know. Like, it was pretty much what I expected. Like, yeah, I spend about that much time on social media. I spend about that much time on entertainment. But the thing that really opened my eyes was about being intentional about what areas I might want to spend my time in more differently or prioritize differently. Seeing it all on paper was really eye-opening. And so I really recommend that. It's a big commitment to take a week, but do it for a week. You can take it in like 15 or 30-minute increments, but seeing how you spend your time and just seeing it all on paper will really help you reflect on how you want to spend your time. And Meg, you mentioned earlier, like what's most important to you. And that really, I can't tell you what you should spend your time on, right? Like one thing for me that I decided to spend less time on is social media. But for some people, that like brings you energy and that adds so much joy to your life that is a really great way to do self-care or to, take care of yourself or have downtime. So I'm not here to tell you spend your time this way or not this way. But I encourage you to take a time log and reflect on how you're choosing to use your time each week.
I think that's really great advice. And actually, so like I come from a paralegal background, so I'm used to having to track my time. I mean, I did it for like 5 or 6 years to like the 10th of an hour. And I will tell you, don't do that. It will drive you insane because you don't fully realize like how long things actually take until you have to realize like, oh God, that took me 20 minutes. And I thought it took me like 5 or 6. So, I completely agree with you that idea of time tracking, it might surprise you, but it probably won't actually once you look at it. I mean, it's very similar to what people do when they're starting the idea of like, should I go on a diet? What am I eating as much or what I should be eating in a day? So yeah, I love the idea of keeping that time log. And your point about like relative importance for people is huge, because there are people that like myself that fall down this like click hole of, well, just one more video, or that looks really interesting. I want to learn how to do that, or like some great accomplishment by one of my friends. But it's also not really something that I find terribly energizing, but other people might completely find it energizing. So I love that approach of like looking at it in a way of like, where do you spend your time? And is that where you want to spend your time? As opposed to kind of falling prey to maybe like the productivity, like society and a lot of those pressures that we live in. Because, your social media break for 15 or 20 minutes a day might seem like wasted time to one person, but it might be completely what's like helping you keep your sanity. So if that's what's working for you, fine. But I completely agree. Like if stuff's not really working and you want to take a look around, you want to try and change some things up, try it. Worst that can happen is it doesn't work for you. So you go back to what you're doing now.
Yeah, and Meg, you had a really good point too. Oh wait, shoot, I just lost it. I do need to come back to the energy piece if you want me to come back to that.
Yeah, go right ahead. Because so the follow-up question for this was, what would you recommend starting very early and leaving early, or pulling a third shift after the kids are asleep? Yeah. So I find this is so I don't have children, full disclosure, but I have several friends who are parents, and this is a big deal with them too. Like, do you try and make yourself a morning person if you're just not, or do you do that night owl thing where you're up hours and hours and hours after everybody else has gone to bed?
Yeah. I remember that other point I was going to come back to, which is don't track your time. I don't recommend tracking your time forever. Like I was very specifically do it for a week, get your learnings and start to apply it. I think I'd go crazy if I was trying to track my time every week. So yeah, that doing it in 6-minute increments sounds like a special kind of torture. Like, well, I don't know, like, do I put an increment in here for like actually like tracking my time? Because like that took me some time to do as well.
Yes. Oh, and that's a good point. If you are like tracking your time, but you're not quite sure, and you know somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes, put 20. Don't short circuit yourself. Don't cause yourself a panic attack thinking like, I was able to get all these things done yesterday. Well, yeah, but you were double counting minutes. So yeah, thank you for making that point. That's super great. So what is your opinion on this split shift idea?
Yeah. I think that it really depends on individual circumstances, and each job. So I just want to like add that disclaimer up front of I can't prescribe for whatever your role is and really what works best for you. For me and my experience, I would not recommend pulling a third shift, which to me means specifically blocking off time after kids go to bed, or basically, taking time that really should be the time for you to take care of yourself or to catch up on other things. I don't recommend setting that time aside for work. I think I'm a big believer in working 100% when you're working and then setting it aside as much as you can. Again, that depends on your job. It depends on what those responsibilities are, but setting that aside. Because if you start working a third shift, to me, you get into this mindset of constantly borrowing time from the future. You're trying to borrow from the future and say, oh, well, I didn't get to it today, but I'll do it tonight at 10 o'clock. But then 10 o'clock comes and you're like, oh man, I really don't want to get on work, but like I have to do it or else it's going to pile up for tomorrow. And you're constantly kind of borrowing time from the future and telling yourself that you're able to do more than you are. Versus if you really block off that time and you say, this is when I'm working and this, I have to get my work done within these hours. When you do that, it'll cause you to prioritize more intentionally and be very careful about what things you're taking on and what you aren't. So I don't recommend working a third shift.
So that's a similar thing for me. And I had to kind of come to a grips with this when my sister had her first child. It was a lot about like, okay, if I'm helping you, my big time, like time that I'm actually going to be useful to you is at night, but you do the early morning thing. So I love that idea of kind of really taking a look at your strong suits and what works better for you and maybe seeing if that works, but if it doesn't, try something else. Jen has her hand raised. Jen, would you like to come off mute and ask your question?
Well, it's not necessarily a question. It's just kind of a different approach. First off, I'm calling in from England, which has some different rules around life and work balance and that sort of thing. And then I'm also in the tech industry, which is undergoing a huge transition right now towards diversity and inclusion and in articulating and understanding the needs of working parents among other marginalized groups. And so at where I work, we've actually got the opportunity to form up groups to feed back to executive management as far as what our needs are for balancing work and life. And for myself, I actually today asked, straight out, what's best practice as far as like your expectations of us, during working hours and when we might have to offset some time because, school calls, and I got to go deal with that. And so I usually
real life that like doesn't fit in with your plans, right?
Exactly. And so I end up adding a little bit of additional time to the end of my workday. But then when working remote, how does that equate to, say, water cooler moments or just being social and stuff like that? And can we be a bit more explicit in explaining what the expectations there are? And so if you have the opportunity in your company to engage in those sort of conversations and to advocate for parents and parent carers and whatnot, definitely take that role up.
I love that. And you're right. It's not a perfect system. There are always going to be things that we don't don't think of or don't realize until we're in it. Like, oh, I didn't think about leaving time for such and such because I only do it every 3 weeks or something. So yeah, and thank you so much for sharing, because like, I think your experience, although very different from Amy's, represents a lot of people, right? There's a lot of people that are working remotely that either did not think that they had an industry that was set up for it, or had no idea how they were going to do this with kids at the beginning of the pandemic. And it's okay to still be kind of like, I don't know if I'm doing this right. Because I feel like, at least from what I hear from my parent friends, that's kind of your default setting, is I don't know if I'm doing this right at any given time. Amy, do you have anything that you'd like to say about what Jen put forth for us?
Yeah, I would say that I did actually, as I was thinking about this beforehand, I did think about that. I do the same thing, in that, like, if something comes up in the middle of the day, or for example, if I have like a kid's doctor appointment that I really want to attend, and I do that, I do offset. Like, I will, in my mind, I'll say, okay, that took an hour out of my day. I'm now going to work an hour later. But sometimes I don't do that. And sometimes I give myself permission, like, it is okay. Because yeah, the equivalent of a water cooler talk. But I also, for myself, I try not to get into the like nickel and dime mindset with my employer. I really am here to accomplish specific tasks and a broader outcomes. And I really try to focus myself in on my progress towards those outcomes, and am I producing great results, rather than focusing in on the nickel and diming of time, because it just gets really demotivating for me, frankly. Like, I'll get into this mindset where I'm like, oh, I really just like need to get out and get some fresh air, and I'm going to go take a walk for 10 minutes. And if I have to feel like now I'm going to have to work 10 minutes later, and that means that I usually make dinner in my home because I like to do that. Well, that means dinner's going to be later, and my people are going to be hungrier and crankier. And then I'm like, oh, I don't have that 10 minutes for myself. I can't do that. But if I was at the office, this is specifically for remote for me. If I was at the office, I would go do it. I'd go take 10 minutes, because I know that if I give myself a chance to reset and get some fresh air, the rest of my day is going to be more productive. So I try not to like get in that nickel and dime mindset, but sometimes I do offset. Sometimes if I have big chunks of the day I'm taking away, or, time them away, and then I'm like, I really need to make that time up, I will. But I don't designate it for like a third shift. I tack it onto the end of my day, so that when I sign off, I'm done for the night.
I agree. I've never gotten any place good with the idea of kind of borrowing time from future me. Like, oh, I'll get that done. I'll have so much more like give a crap later. No, I won't. No. Why do we try for these things? Aspirational is one thing, but like, let's also stay somewhere realistic, so that by the time you're done with the idea that maybe this could be you, if you have, that's great. But if you haven't, there's no sense beating yourself up over it. All right. So we did have another question that kind of goes along these same lines. This person says that in order to have it all, we seem to like have to learn how to say no. What are your time protection strategies that allow you to say no without looking like you're not a team player and are not fully invested? And I found this to be a really, really interesting question, because that is something that I've fallen prey to a lot in my career, mostly because I've changed jobs and changed industries so many times that I'm always feeling like the new person. So you're always like, well, yeah, of course, I'm a team player, I can do that. But like you said, when you've got people that are depending on you because they can't really feed themselves, at least not, anything other than carpet fuzz, this really changes what your priorities are. So is this something you found that you really had to develop this skill of how to say no in a specific way?
Yeah. I think that there's the saying no, but there's also like not taking extra on, right? Because I think sometimes when we want to be a team player, we want to be the person that's like, I can do that to help out. And we want to be helpful. And I think that's a good thing. Like you don't have to like feel like you're fighting your desire to be a helpful colleague. I think that comes from a good place. And I think it's a healthy thing. The way I look at it is being intentional about what you do and don't take on. So if it's something that like you are in the best position to take that on, but go ahead and volunteer. If you think that that's actually a really good use of your time, that's great. It's just that intentionality and making sure that you, if you're going to sign up for something, you can actually do it, that you can follow through, because it's also not being a good team player if you take on too much and then you don't follow through on the commitments. That's going to actually do worse for you than just not having signed up in the first place. But yeah, I do want to say, like, it really is important to be able to say no, or I think some of the comments said, say not right, not now. I can't do that right now. That is okay. And it's good to be able to know your boundaries. By the way, I think this also is a great parenting thing I've learned, is that it's important to have boundaries and know what they are and to enforce them. That doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't make you a bad mom, a bad partner, or a bad colleague. It's just knowing your boundaries so that people can actually depend on you when you're saying you're going to do something. A technique that I have used in terms of communicating with my teams is to every week I identify my weekly big three. I actually got this from a podcast that I listened to called Lead to Win. And the technique is to, at the beginning of your week, identify, if I get nothing else done this week, what are the three most important things for me to focus on? That is a really, really great strategy that I have used. I've found the weeks that I'm like, oh, I'm not going to do my big three. There's way more than three. I just got to get going. Those are the weeks I get to the end of the week and I'm like, I didn't get the most important things done. I wish I would have focused my time a little differently. I also apply that to the day. So I don't share my daily three with my team, but I do share my weekly three with my team members, so that they know what I'm focused on. And that gives them a chance to say, hey, I didn't see this on your list, and I think this is actually really important. Can you focus on this? Or does this maybe belong somewhere in that list? Or is that number 4? How do you see it? So it gives us a chance to get on the same page. And I do that daily. I don't share my daily three with my team, but I do that for myself at the beginning of the workday. It's part of my spin up activity for the day. I write it down. I used to put on a whiteboard. My whiteboard's further away, so I moved my desk. So I write it down on a piece of paper by my desk. These are the 3 things to do for the day. And that helps keep me focused when I go throughout the day and I'm like, oh man, I feel like my head is spinning. I've got so many things I need to be doing. What are the most important things today? Sometimes I'll change them, right? Something will come up during the day. I'm like, man, got to cross this off. Something else just jumped to the top of the list. But it helps me be intentional.
No, I absolutely love that. And you're right. So we had one question asking if the podcast was called Think to Win. And I think that's what you had said.
Lead to Win.
Lead to Win.
By Michael Hyatt and Company.
Thank you. And actually, if you want to, or, especially if we kind of shout out more stuff in the chat, we can, if you want to include those links in the email that we have going back and forth, we can make sure that those end up attached to the rewatch email. No, I think what you said is really important, right? About the idea of kind of laying out what your priorities are, because I think that's really great. And then having that ready response of not now. I'm personally I'm a people pleaser and I like to help and I like to try and feel like I'm actually doing something for people, but it leads to a lot of over promising and under delivering, which is not what I'm going for. And so having the ability and the vocabulary to say, you know what, I would love to help with that project. It's something that I would really love to dig in on, but here's what I've got going on right now. And I don't think I have room, especially when it comes from top down, gives you a better way of saying do you want me to reprioritize based on what, priority schedule I've already set up? Or it can effectively kind of not necessarily shut someone down, but give you a little bit more credibility with someone, especially if it's a coworker that's saying, hey, can you help with this? Or, hey, would you, can you take this task? It's a better way to do it that kind of leaves you looking a little bit like you've put a lot of thought into it, like you really wish you could help. So that's awesome. And Amy just put some other book recommendations in the thread as well. So thank you for that, Amy. Okay, so we had another question that kind of dovetails off of this. So this person is talking about how they're going to be returning to work in about 8 or 12 months. Or sorry, they're coming back to work after having been gone for about 8 to 12 months. Do you have any tips for managing this transition? I have 3 children and I don't want this change to be hard on them. Now, obviously, this is going to be, an adjustment for everybody, no matter what. But as someone who has multiple children, so I'm assuming you've probably gone on and off maternity leave at some point. What would you say to this person?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And I love to hear when somebody is mindful of the transition's hard for me, but what about other people in my life? The first thing I want to say, Meg, what you just said, it is going to be hard. It's going to be hard on them, and that's okay. And it's going to be hard on you too. And that's okay. Give yourself permission for it to be difficult. Transitions in life are hard. And I think sometimes we think like, oh, if I just have this magic approach, it's going to be so easy, or it'll be so much easier. There will be hard moments no matter what you do. And so just create space for that in your emotional wallet. But I think that it's important to remember that children are resilient, and they will learn from watching you. They'll grow from the experience. But as far as tips, I'd say if your children are old enough, talk with them and help them understand why, like your purpose. Why are you going back to work? Kids are really smart, and they're also very generous, like very forgiving, very generous and understanding. And if they know that this is important to you and why it's important to you, they'll actually champion it for you. They'll be like, hey, how did it go? How, again, depending on the age, 2-year-old's not going to ask you how your day at work went. But like, even with my 7-year-old, I've noticed, he's mindful of those things for me and what's important to me. And so I'd say talk with them, help them understand why you're making the transition, and then make a plan together about how you can make the transition less stressful, right? So you could explain to them, hey, I'm going to have less time to make dinner. Usually I make dinner, and that's, really important to our family. We're going to have some takeout some more, or I'm going to pay for this meal service, and our meals aren't going to be quite as fancy, or you're not going to get the same meals that you're used to because I'm not going to have time to make them. So here's what you can expect. Help them understand what is changing and what isn't changing. I am committed to still having bedtime with you every night, or I'm committed to reading a book to you every night, even though I'm making this transition. So, when you're feeling like you're not getting enough time with me during the day, remember that every night we're going to have that time together, or every morning I'm going to get up and help you get ready for school, or whatever those things are. So just creating those expectations up front for them and with yourself, like, so what those commitments are, so you're less tempted to work that third hour or that third shift, right? You're less tempted to borrow from that personal time for work.
I absolutely love that idea. And it kind of makes me think like, it is really helpful to not only set those expectations, but if you're talking about this with your kid, obviously age dependent, but you might find out that they don't care about the dinners. They want to be able to like sit in the kitchen and do their homework and talk to you while you're cooking. So maybe it's not even really about the food, it's about the time together that's there. Or they might just have some focus that's so completely not what you were thinking of, like, well, when are we going to play with the dog? Okay, well, you can play with the dog even if I'm not there. So here's what you can do, and take him out in the yard and all this kind of stuff. So I love that idea of like setting those expectations, telling them like, well, this is still going to be the same, and this is still going to be the same, but we're going to do this differently. And to see, like, hopefully if you can kind of troubleshoot out in advance of, a complete tantrum meltdown, what they might have problems with, or what they're really going to miss. And can you switch things around to keep that? Or is there something else that you can do instead? Say, well, I know you miss us reading a book at bedtime all the time. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to make it a wake up story. So when you get up in the morning, I'm going to read to you, from this book, or we're going to do yoga together. We're going to do some stretching, and we're going to jump around. It's going to be so much fun. Replace it with some other thing that kind of gets at what they're looking for. Is it quality time? Is it exercise? Is it, the good food that mom always makes? Figure out a way to, kind of either reincorporate that on the weekends or something. Jen, you had your hand raised. What do you have to add?
Yeah, thank you. I've got an affirmation, I've got a scaffold, and then I've got an idea. So the affirmation was basically that the kids aren't going to remember mom actually doing the cooking. The kids are going to remember mom sitting down at the dinner table. Okay. So the scaffold, I kind of forgot about.
No worries, happens to me all the time.
But then also the idea, though, is that if you have the opportunity to practice, mom being at work, even remotely from home, during summer, take advantage of that, set up a plan with the kids. Hey, let's pretend mom's working, 8 to 5. So mom's in her workspace, let's practice, keeping, disturbances and things like that low. It also helps you identify, areas where maybe your kids might need some help learning about how they can be more independent depending on their age. That's age appropriate. And there's some opportunity there. and in practicing all that. My kids had loads of practice before I actually went back to work.
That's a great tip. I'm totally going to use that when I'm coming back to work after my next maternity leave.
Yeah, so
love that.
like lean on, I mean, if needed, lean on community and friends, where kids might spend a day with grandparents or, at a friend's house or something. And, they're not disturbing you, or they're sorting out their own issues, or, anybody else who's involved in their care, be it daycare, be it school, be it family members and that sort of thing. Get started now and practicing. And start troubleshooting, if something comes up, how are you going to deal with it?
I absolutely love that.
Meg, I did want to add one more thing that came to mind while you were sharing. When you're having those conversations with your kids or whoever it is that's going to be feeling your absence most, when you're returning to work, I just wanted to say, don't sign up for too much. Like, don't take on too much and overcommit. It's the same thing as with work, right? If you're saying like, yes, I'll do that and I'll do that and that because you want to do it, I would say really focus on what those most important things are so that you can keep that commitment, because that's most important, that your kids see that you're saying, I'm at work, but I'm still committed to you. Here's how I'm going to be committed to you. And those are, they're non-negotiables. I mean, there may be extenuating circumstances once in a while, but.
Yeah. Amy just reminded me of the scaffold, which was basically reaffirming with the kids. I don't know if anybody's into attachment theory or anything like that with children, but yeah, when you promise your kids something, follow through on it. And that actually, I mean, it may seem like in the short term that they're very dependent on you, but in the long term, it fosters more independence and confidence later.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so to keep us moving, I just want to highlight, we only have about 30 minutes left in today's session. So if you have a question that you want to ask, make sure you ask it. Come off mute, put it in the chat, whatever you'd like. All right, so this woman had written in saying, I've been a former director of sales for years, but I want to change careers and break into the tech world after having been a stay-at-home mom for 5 years. Do you have any tips for me?
Yeah. First, I say good for you on being bold and making that move. That is so awesome. There's a reason you made that change, or you're making that change. So I would say lean into that and really know what your passion is there, like why you're moving into technology, because it is a hard space to break into when you don't have like a traditional entry. It's getting better. I've seen a lot of things improve over the last several years. A lot of, I mean, I don't know. I don't have a good pulse on like the whole industry, but like I know at Pluralsight, we have an apprenticeship program that we run that is specifically for non-traditional entry. So that could be like students from boot camps, or even people that are like doing what's sometimes called an encore career, like they're trying this later in life. So there are opportunities, so you can look for those. But aside from that, I'd say, being able to demonstrate those technical skills and that passion. You're not going to have, just like anybody entering a new career, a new industry, you're not going to have all the skills you need right away. You can't like magically fabricate 20 years experience and knowledge. But what you can do is demonstrate what you do know and how you're learning and growing. And if you can show that hunger and that passion, that'll take you so far, because that's what, on my end, where I'm a little bit further in my career and I've been in the industry for a while and I'm helping make hiring decisions. I often look for that, like, okay, for the skills that they don't have, because everybody's going to need skills on the job they don't have. Are they willing to learn? Are they excited about learning? And what are they doing now to invest in themselves? So I think as long as you can demonstrate those and showcase those through your resume, the interview process, you'll do great.
We've got people just jumping in the chat, just completely agreeing with you here. Mo said, I feel that being a stay-at-home parent should be included on all resumes and CVs, because that's really filling the role of like 6 different jobs or more all at once. And I completely agree. That was actually the next question we were going to go into. This person was looking for a job after taking time off to be a caregiver, and wanted to know how to address the skills that you acquire by being a parent on a resume. Feel like there's so much value, but I'm not quite sure how to word it. Have you done, do you have experience in this, or have you seen resumes from people who've done this successfully?
I haven't seen a resume that really showcased that I was like, wow, that's amazing. In fact, I don't think I've seen a single resume where somebody decided to showcase that. I think that you'd have to do that in pretty carefully. I think it depends on the company. You'd want to tailor it to the company, because I think it's important when you're searching for a job to find a company that is supportive of being a human and having a life outside work, that it's not actually like the most important thing in your life forever. I think it's important to find a company that supports that. But even still, in those supportive places, it can leave a bad taste in somebody's mouth if they feel like you're trying to highlight that to maybe hide a gap in the technical skills required for the job. And technical doesn't mean have to be just technology, right? It can mean, I don't know, things in the medical field. There's just like those core skills required for the job.
Yeah, staying up on whatever the newest work practices are, or whatever the new regulations are, that kind of thing. Yeah, agree.
Yeah, if it's kind of like, well, like it could be seen as an excuse of like why I'm not up to date is because I've been doing these other things. And look, it's okay that's what you've been doing. Like that is a great use of your time, and then that's how you what you decided to do, and that's great. And I think it's exactly right. You do gain skills. You gain so many skills. I've become a much better employee because of the skills I've had to learn as a mother. That doesn't mean that people that aren't mothers don't have those skills, right? Everybody has their own learning journey, but for me specifically, that really helped me. I think those things are best showcased during an interview. They will come through. Those communication skills, those soft skills are so important. They're so valuable. They will shine through. They'll shine through in the conversations that they have with you, and your emotional intelligence, those things that you gain from being a caretaker, they'll shine through in an interview. But I haven't seen it on a resume.
I'm actually really interested to see it too, because we've had, so I sit in a lot of these, and I'm lucky enough that people entertain me participating in parenting panels, even though I don't have children, have no plans to have children, all that kind of stuff. But you're right, it is definitely one of those things that you want to make sure that you feel comfortable sharing. Especially if a company really prides themselves on, being supportive of working parents. I think that it never could hurt to like kind of highlight that, because in a little way you're sort of calling their bluff. But yeah, I think that's really interesting. And you're right. It does greatly depend on what you're trying to put forward. And you want to make sure that it doesn't look like you're trying to cover for deficiencies somewhere else. So yeah, I love that. Jen, did you have a thought?
Yeah, actually, I have a 10-year gap in my CV. I was a former business analyst for Siemens, business and applications analyst for Siemens back circa 2000, and didn't return to tech until this past year. During pandemic, I got a job with Google's leading partner, and I'm now a Google certified architect, platform engineer, and I'm also a data analyst. So it can be done. My children, my son's autistic and my daughter's a childhood cancer survivor. So that's why for the big gap in my CV. And really what made all the difference for me when I was interviewing and going for these jobs was finding mentors and finding sponsors, building my networks, going and getting involved in communities, getting known, just building up a rapport with a lot of folks, and then getting introduced to the right companies who do support talent, looking for great talent in these areas. So, because I still think that there's more work out there than there are bodies to actually finish that work. So a lot of companies in tech especially are having to dive deeper into diversity and inclusion to attract great talent.
Totally. And actually that makes a really good point, because that was one of the questions that we got asked a lot. People wanted to know what questions to ask during the interview process to make sure that company values a work-life balance or work-life integration, because this person wants to be sure that they will be able to prioritize their family if push comes to shove. So Amy, have you had any experience with this?
Yeah, I think it's a really good thing to try to dive into. An interview is a two-way street, and it is your job to try to get answers to those things that may not be offered right away, because, you know, when that offer comes your way, you want to be able to know that you have the most important things, the most important questions answered. So I think it's a really good thing to be thinking about during an interview. It is a difficult thing to ask, right? Because you don't want to come across as like already trying to, like, I don't know, hedge or like make excuses for why you can't work. And unfortunately, sometimes people perceive it that way. I think there are a lot of creative ways that you can do that, right? So for one, just this is like on the probably the softest side, and probably wouldn't only do this, but ask people what their personal interests and hobbies are. You'll get an idea for, you know, do they even have the energy and time, are they giving that to themselves to think about what's important to them and what fulfills them outside work. So that's one question you can ask. You can ask somebody, what's the norm for working hours here? You could even say, you know, it's really important to me that I give 100% while I'm at work. What are the expectations for working hours? Another question you could ask is, how often is there work outside of those hours? And you can get an idea for what people are working. You don't even have to ask, like, you know, is there going to be time for my family? Because again, that looks different for everybody. Some people are working parents and they want to work, you know, 70-hour weeks. Like that's how they prioritize their career. Other people want to work 30-hour weeks. Understand what the norm is for the place that you're working. And if you can, I would ask probably if you're working with somebody on the talent acquisition or recruiting team, you can ask them, are there explicit working hours or availability required for this role? Because some roles will be, you know, you need to be available 8 to 5. Other roles will be, you can work whenever you want during the day. You just have to put in 8 hours of work, or you have to put in 5 hours of work. It really depends on the role, and that's okay to ask. But I don't think you have to put the pressure on yourself to disclose your family situation. That is, it's a protected class, I believe. And so they are not allowed to ask you about your family status. And you're not required to disclose it. It is okay to ask about what the expectations and requirements of the job are.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point with it. I don't think we hear often enough really about, you know, interviewing being a two-way street. You really need to ask the questions, but also listen to how they're being answered. You know, is the interviewer glad that you asked about this because it gives them an opportunity to, like, you know, talk about something they're really proud of? Are you hitting on a nerve that is something they know they're not doing well on, but they're, you know, they're determined to improve in that area? Or are you hitting on something that, like, isn't really that important to them, and so they're like, well, no, we don't have, you know, a program for that. No, we don't have a working parents ERG. So yeah, I think you're right. It's a really good thing to really kind of keep in mind as you're going through this process. We also have really great people chiming in the chat here about, Mo had said that they asked the interviewer to tell me what show or book or sports team best typifies the company culture of their team. And I think that's absolutely wonderful, because it gets you away from that, like, buzzwordy, like, well, we're so collaborative and we're just like family. It's like, well, are you really? Are you? Because, like, I don't like a lot of my extended family, like the blood ones. So, like, why would I like, you know, Susie in accounting? So yeah, I think that's Mo, I love that. I'm definitely stealing that idea.
I love that. That's awesome.
All right, so we have about 12 minutes left. I'm going to try and get to one more question here, and then we'll go into a little bit more about Pluralsight. This person wanted to know, how do you work efficiently without feeling bad about leaving your children at home? How do you deal with that mom guilt that is basically ever present no matter what you try and do?
Yeah, I would say be curious about your guilt first. Why do you feel guilty? I think we call it mom guilt because I think as women, it's typically women that are, you know, take on more and feel like this added responsibility and blame ourselves when things aren't perfect. But I think men feel it too. I think that there's just maybe more stigma around it. Why do you feel the guilt? Be curious about it. Is it because of other people's expectations? That was one for me that I learned through being curious about my own guilt, was like, oh, it's because I think other people think I should be doing it this way. And other people in my community, my personal community, feel like I should not be the one working. And so I had to decide to not give them permission to rule my life, or to make me feel guilty, or to hurt my feelings, right? be curious about why that is, because that'll change what you want to do about it. You may be able to shed those negative feelings, or at least some of them. And with the ones that are, coming from you because it's important to you, it goes back to time management. Find ways to still get that value and provide that value so you can be fulfilled. I really believe it's possible. It may not be that you can do everything that you wanted to do, but really find those things that are most important to you. And so specifically, they said, feeling bad about leaving children at home. Maybe you don't want to miss some key moments. Maybe you can set up a camera in your house if the caregiver's in your home. Maybe you can set up a camera that records. And when they say, hey, maybe you have it in a couple different rooms and they say, hey, your baby crawled today, you can go say, hey, what time was that at? And you can go look it up, right? Or maybe if it's at a care, at a daycare facility, you can talk with the care provider and say, this is really important to me, and it would really make a big difference to me if I know she's getting so close to crawling or getting really close to those first steps. Can you just take a few extra videos when you think she's getting close and try to capture some of those moments and share them with me? I'll give you $20 at the end of the week, or you don't even need to offer to pay them. It's probably part of their job. A lot of care providers, I think, do provide some pictures. I've experienced that. So find what those key things are for you. Maybe it's having time to emotionally connect with your kids. Something that I've started doing, I'm still working on getting better at, more consistent at, is providing one-on-one time with my kids. It's important to me that each of my kids know that they have a relationship with their mom, that it's not, I'm a doer. I'm like always kind of hustling and bustling and going. So for me, it's important to take that time to be intentional and just be present with my kids. And I say, hey, we have 15 minutes. It's mom and Jack time. What do you want to do, buddy? We're going to do whatever you want to do. And, sometimes he's like, I want to watch TV. And I'm like, I don't feel like that's the best use of time with just me and you, because you could watch TV another time. And sometimes he convinces me. He's like, but I want to show you this really cool part of the show that I thought was really funny. And I'm like, okay, we're going to watch TV. But a lot of times it'll be, we'll go outside or we'll just talk and we'll have that time to connect. That's important to me. It helps me not feel guilty, because when I'm at work, I'm like, I'm actually going to get this more intentional time. When I've been on maternity leave and gone back to work, that has helped me be more clear about like what's important for me. And I've learned that sometimes as a working parent, I'm actually more present with my kids than, for that 3-hour block at night. I'm more present with them than I am when I feel like, oh, I have all day, I can do all these things. I'm actually sometimes less present when I feel like I have all day with them.
Yep, absolutely understood there. And I think that you raise a really good point, right? Of trying to give them the opportunity and like kind of clarify a little bit, like, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Because we only have this so much time. So maybe, do you want to go out and go for a walk? Do you want to go, we'll pet the dogs or something like that. And I think you make a really good point earlier too about, figuring out what's really important to you. And it's okay if that changes over time. It's okay if it changes day to day even, but figure out what's important to you and what you want to achieve, and then let go of how you thought it would look, because that is something that was very hard for me to internalize. But the idea of how you thought things were going to turn out and that picture you have in your head is what ruins your experience so often. If you can get rid or let go of what you thought it was going to look like and just enjoy the way it happened, that is a lot easier on yourself than trying to, like kind of post-mortem be like, but why? No, it was supposed to look like this, and why didn't it work out? Okay, but like it did work out. It just doesn't look the way you thought. And especially in, our very shallow, surface driven culture, it's really easy to fall into that trap and not even really realize that you're there. So yeah, I absolutely love that.
Yeah, and every experience might not be like end on a super positive note, right? Like I have times my kids are like, oh, I wanted more time. And I'm like, you're sadder now than if we hadn't spent the 15 minutes. Like, did I just waste my time? It's okay. Like you said, it may not go the way you want, but what's important is that they know that you care and you're working on that relationship. You're not going to always be able to check a box at the end.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so in the last 6 minutes we have, I just want to highlight a little bit here for you. So the screen that you're looking at is a couple questions that we put to Amy before today's session. And these are about, kind of ways she would describe the Pluralsight company culture, your favorite part about working at Pluralsight. So let's talk a little bit about my favorite one. What are some of your top tips for someone who's interviewing? That was a lot of the questions that we got today, or for this session, were about, ways to get in with the Pluralsight team. So let's talk a little bit about what are your top tips for someone who's interviewing with Pluralsight.
Yeah, so the two I put in there, obviously going for brevity on the slide here, is knowing your connection to Pluralsight's mission and values. That makes somebody stand out. And that goes for probably any company, not just Pluralsight. If you're really serious about working somewhere, know why. Like, why do you care about what the work is that company is doing and how your role contributes to the success of the company? That will also lead you to look into materials that the company has published elsewhere beforehand, right? So looking at company values, that'll help you understand, is family and work balance important to this company? And then the second thing was being prepared to just share your own success stories. We, at least me and my hiring and the hiring I've seen in Pluralsight, we really focus on being able to tell us about a time when things happened, right? We don't want to ask questions that are like, basically, can you give us all the buzzwords around this thing and can you talk your way through it? We want to know about what you've really demonstrated and what you've learned. And even if this is a new career for you, find stories that you feel like demonstrate, your core competencies and what makes you, and be willing to share those. Like what does success mean to you? Like why, not that would be a question, but like when they're asking questions, know how to speak to why you thought you succeeded in that case. And really sharing those stories like that, the clarity of those stories will put you head and shoulders above the other candidates.
I love that. Yeah, finding a way to make it personal, that is huge. So we have some posts or some job postings that we wanted to highlight, and I think your colleague Liz is on the chat also to talk about these. Liz, what would you like the audience to know about some of these jobs at Pluralsight? And I've got links, I think, that I can share with y'all for this. Yeah, I've got links to Pluralsight's company page.
Fantastic. If I could just step back just one moment to Amy's thoughts around the interview process and having a clear story around your success. One method that you can Google to perhaps come up with that story is the STAR interview method. This is sort of a really great formula to understand what situation was at hand, the task that you took on, the actions that you took, and the results. And if you can create that story as it relates to the job description with your experience, wow, you're going to knock it out of the park. Now, this is just a handful of positions that we have. Quite literally, we have over 100 positions that are posted today. For the most part, roles are available for remote work. I'll be honest, I'm not super well versed with our digital performance position. So that one is likely remote based in the US as the others are. Our roles, what I'd recommend that you do, of course, is take a look at the job posting on the link that Meg shared through the Power to Fly platform, or you can head over to our careers site as well. Review the positions. Even if you feel like you do not meet every single box, apply. There's likely a lot of transferable skills that you have that will help you create success in the position, which you can illustrate through the interview process. And as well, our applicant tracking system platform allows you to be notified when new positions in your area of expertise are posted automatically. So that puts a bit more automation into those notifications, so you don't feel tied to checking our website or any company's website on a day-to-day basis. And then, of course, feel free to connect with us. Connect with any of the folks within the company who have these job titles today. Start those networking conversations to understand what a day in the life is like. You might realize that what you thought you wanted to do wasn't really what you want to do once you learn more about it, and that's okay. You'll find something else that's even better.
Thank you, Liz. That's such great advice, and I absolutely love it. I have shared Amy's LinkedIn information there in case you want to connect with her. I also shared the link for Pluralsight's company page at Power to Fly, as well as the link to some of our upcoming, where you can look at our upcoming chat schedule to see if there's anything else you'd like to register for or attend. I just want to say a huge thank you to both Liz and Amy for loaning us your expertise and spending time with us today. It's always more work than just the hour that you see in front of you. So I'm really, really happy that y'all partnered with us on this and that I got to spend the afternoon learning from you guys. So thank you so much. I also want to send a big thank you to our attendees, to our audiences, especially all those watching on YouTube right now. I just want to say a huge thank you to all the great questions that you submitted ahead of today's session. The questions in the session were absolutely amazing. Thank you, Jen, for your participation. It always makes these events far more interactive, more personal, and just kind of underscores why this is my favorite part of my job. So thank you so much to everyone. Hopefully you'll be joining us for some of our great chats we have coming up. Don't forget, we're not doing a mini summit in August, but we will be doing one in September, and we are doing a virtual job fair in August. So I'll make sure that over the next couple of sessions that I host for chats in the coming weeks, we share that information with you. So that way, if you are looking right now, you can take a, kind of help yourself out, attend our virtual job fair, and get to meet some really great companies. Thank you so much to Pluralsight for loaning us these wonderful people today, and we can't wait to see what comes of this partnership going forward. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Monday. The rest of your week goes smooth, and that we will see you back here again soon. Bye, everybody.